The following is a GoPowercat.com production.
It is 30 degrees in Manhattan, Kansas, and in Studio 73 here in Frisco, Texas, it is a nice, warm 69 degrees on still a winter day. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
That hurt me. That hurt me.
I did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nice here today. The wind's not too bad. The sun is out. It's a nice day here today.
The dogs went to the back door this morning, looked at the trace of snow on the deck, and looked at me like, "What the hell, Dad? What'd you do?" I'm like, I got no control over this. They were not happy. I'm not happy, but it'll warm back up.
It will. It will. Thanks, everybody, for coming to Big 12 Insiders. Again, this is Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald. Fitz, man, Big 12 basketball. It's getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Big weekend this weekend. There's a couple of games that kind of stand out. Let's just get to it and you go down the schedule. Just the first game that pops up, it's at 11 o'clock on Saturday. I mean, Tech at Iowa State. Fitz, I kind of think Iowa State is separating themselves from the rest of the league. Not necessarily from Houston, but I think they're separating themselves from a lot of other teams. And they are, we talked earlier about the cream rising to the top. I think Iowa State is one of those teams that is rising to the top within the conference.
Yeah, and Tech is, kind of regrouped a little bit after
they have
injuries. You know what? I don't mean to always make this about K-State because I'm the K-State guy, but K-State and TCU are on ESPNU, which is, the lowest of the ESPN channels above streaming. And Tech and Iowa State, a very crucial game in Big 12 play. I mean, if Tech can win, now it's a mess. If Iowa State wins, they are chasing down Houston, and they're putting a lot of pressure on them. In fact, I think they've got them tied, but they still got to go to Houston. Why is that game on streaming, but TCU and Kansas State's on an actual channel? I don't understand. I really don't get it. I've noticed they moved some games around now, Big B, to get particularly Iowa State on better channels because they probably didn't have the preseason booking. But why doesn't the ESPN, if they own the rights to the game, just delay until the week before to let us know what channel it's on? We don't need to know a month before the season. No. I don't understand this.
No, they do it in football. They move stuff all around all the time. So I don't know why you couldn't do the same thing here. I get it. And I understand exactly what you're saying, but it's just like, come on, ESPN, let's figure this out. So
yeah, as much as I know K-State fans appreciate not being on the streaming, if maybe you're in a rural area and you need to have the cable hookup, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem to make much sense that a game that is really impactful in the Big 12 is on Big 12 Now, the most meaningless name ever. It's on ESPN Plus. People don't fall for that. There's no Big 12 Now when you go over there that is visible, at least. And K-State, TCU gets to be on the U, which isn't much better than streaming, but it's not streaming.
Right, absolutely. And you could argue, I mean, Tech's not ranked, but you could argue that this is the biggest game of the weekend. I mean, it comes on right at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. You could argue that it is absolutely the biggest game of the weekend because it's kind of what you said, Fitz. Tech has kind of figured some stuff out. They had some injuries, had some illnesses, which, an illness, I mean, it'll wipe you out. The problem with an illness, it usually doesn't stop at one person. It usually goes to 6 or 7 people, and it usually may last a couple of weeks to get through those people, and it'll wipe you out. So it'll set your team back for a couple of weeks, but it seems like they fought through. Yep. And now they're at a position to where they're playing good basketball again. And just, I think they're going to go. I think Iowa State wins. Don't get me wrong. I think Iowa State wins, but I think Tech really shows itself well because one thing that Tech hasn't been doing from the start of the season was rebounding the basketball. Well, they seem like they may have figured some stuff out as far as trying to rebound the basketball. They're doing a lot better job of that the last few games.
Okay, Big B. Iowa State and Houston are currently tied atop the conference at 8-3. Baylor is right behind them at 7-4, as is Tech. So those four schools have kind of separated. Kansas at 7-5 is a half game behind them. Then you got BYU, TCU at 6-5, OU at 6-6, and now you're into what the bottom six teams. So you've broken it 8-6, 5-6, 5-6 for Texas and Baylor, or excuse me, Texas and K-State. How did I get that one wrong? Huh. Cincinnati, UCF at 4-7, West Virginia and Okie State 3-8, 2-9. This conference is still packed with 7 games to go, but we're beginning to get a more clear picture about who the consistent teams are, and they're Houston and Iowa State as of now. They go out on the road and win some games, which is exceedingly difficult in this conference, and Kansas, which typically is your kind of pace setter in the conference, they're not getting it done on the road, and I don't know what they can change about it. I just don't think they're that good, and they're certainly not very deep. But on the road, they just don't play with the same kind of energy they have at Allen Fieldhouse. If they could maybe, get one of those, like turn their locker room into dress it up like Allen Fieldhouse. I don't know. It's just I can't figure them out. How can you be so good one place and so bad another place? At least K-State's consistently mediocre.
Right.
I say that about
it. The one thing about KU is I think that they're not as good as what I think people anticipated that they were going to be. That's the one thing. And they don't have this outstanding superstar or a guy that's going to go to the NBA. Hunter Dickinson, look, there's a reason that he transferred to Kansas and didn't turn pro. Yeah. I mean, and it's not because, hey, you're making NBA money as NBA money. That's more than NIL money. And he didn't turn pro for a reason. And I'm not saying he's a bad basketball player. I'm just saying they don't have these NBA guys running around in their locker room this year. And there's a huge difference. And if they do, they're young. And that's the difference with KU. And their bench is not very deep. Look, I still say Bill Self is one of the top coaches in the country. I'm never going to say that he's not, because he is. But you can only do so much when you don't have as talented of guys. And I think that's what KU is running into this year. And because inconsistency is kind of marred in when you're not very good, you're not as good, you tend to play inconsistent. Well, not being able to win on the road is literally the definition of being inconsistent.
Yeah. I'll be I really will truly be interested to see where Hunter Dickinson is drafted.
Yeah.
If he's drafted.
Correct.
He's a prototypical old school big man.
Yeah.
He posts up. He's got a great inside presence, but he lumbers up and down the court. He's not particularly quick. He's a pretty active shot blocker. If the ball comes to him on a rebound, or if he can run someone over, he'll go get it. But I'll be blunt here. Some of his stuff he does on the court, the hooks and throwing people down, he's going to get knocked out in the NBA.
Yeah. They don't stand for that.
Yeah. If you try to, I saw someone, was a defender standing over him and he was bent over and he lifted up his head and intentionally, hit the guy in the face. I mean, come on, what is this nonsense? Why do you spend effort on that? Are you trying to intimidate people? Well, you just make them mad, and maybe that works on some people, but some people that's a mistake. They might actually elevate their play. So I'll be interested, but Bill Self is so good at using what he's got.
Mm-hmm.
Now he doesn't have enough. That's the issue. He doesn't have anything to use. And your show yesterday talked about transfer portals failures and hits, and they've got some failures on that bench that just haven't panned out the way they thought they would. I don't know that the transfer portal has been quite as impactful on some of these Big 12 teams that it has been in the past year.
Correct. And speaking of Kansas, I know we're beating a dead horse here, but they play OU tomorrow. I expect OU to win that game. The game's in Norman. I expect OU to win that game. OU got smacked around the last time out. So against Baylor, I believe it was against Baylor, and they got smacked around. They have to turn some things around. Look, they were playing well. They struggled early in the conference season, got some stuff figured out, and then they got smacked around. I expect them, first of all, I think there'll be a lot of people at the game. I just think they'll win that game. They'll be up. They got to try to show the committee. I think OU's firmly in the tournament,
right?
But it never hurts to beat Kansas, to just strengthen your resume, strengthen your seed, also strengthen your seed in the Big 12 tournament. Fits. I don't think enough people are talking about how crazy this Big 12 tournament is going to be. I think it's just going to be outstanding.
Right. I agree.
So
I agree. I think I've made this joke before, but it'll never get old to me. I'll be interested to watch how the Big 12 handles the tiebreakers and seedings. I mean, because
yeah,
this is a mess. It's a
it's a
mess.
mess.
Here's a perfect example. If Oklahoma does indeed beat KU, they're both tied at 7-6. And with like 5 games to go in conference play, if Iowa State and Houston both defend their home courts and they're both very good at home, Kansas will be 3 games in the loss column behind them.
Yeah. Kansas is not winning the Big 12 this
That's
year.
basically it's over at that point.
Yeah,
But one might collapse, not both.
No.
Particularly when they got to play each other.
Yeah, I don't see Kansas being able to win the Big 12 this year. Lost too many road games.
Right.
I think Kansas will go undefeated at home, but that's not going to mean as much. They still got to go to Houston. There's some games left on their schedule here, and I think Saturday is another one that they're not going to win moving forward. Here's a team that a lot of people are talking about, Fitz, BYU.
Yeah.
BYU has started to put it together. I know everybody, they called them, a metrics darling at the beginning of the year, and the metrics really loved them. Non-con wasn't great. And then all of a sudden, they get into conference play, and they start to play better. They start to play even better than what they were. They start to basically show that they're a good basketball team. Well, here in the last couple of weeks, they've put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
And BYU is saying, look, we're a player in this thing. And they're not out of this whole conference race. I mean, a couple things go their way. They are not out of this thing. So they got a road game. Now, look, this is a game against Oklahoma State, who struggled. You got to go win that basketball game and just, put your foot on them when you can. And because Oklahoma State, we kind of talked about it a couple of days ago, it's like they may be ready to just call it quits for the season. I think they may have cashed it in already.
Well, look, BYU is pretty typical of a Big 12 team. They're much more effective at home. That's a great venue, 17,000 fans, children eating pastries like crazy. Have you seen that video?
Yes.
That child. Oh my gosh. He's going to be a chunky.
Yeah, a little bit.
He keeps us up every home game. But look, if BYU goes to Oklahoma State and wins, which I would expect based on what you said, I think their win over K-State was kind of their big win. They got that done.
Right.
If they go there and win, they're right back in it. I mean, if KU loses Oklahoma, now we're talking about a BYU team that's a half game up on those teams. So it's crazy. They still got to come to Manhattan. That's one of the games that's key for K-State. At this point, every team has got to defend their home court. And if you don't, you're just going to continue to sink and sink. If you can't win at home, you're probably not winning on the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you're Texas.
Unless you're Texas, which is still incredible. Texas, oh, man. Again, one of the more talented teams in the country. They've got talent on that basketball team. They just do. And somehow they cannot figure out how to put this thing together, Fitz. I don't know. But I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. If they figure it out and they put some wins together and they can get into the tournament, if they sneak in somehow, win 2 or 3 games in the Big 12 tourney, and then get into the NCAA, they can do damage. They can end up in the Sweet 16, and we'll all be sitting here like, how in the world did that happen?
No doubt.
It's one of those years where, and look, I love parity, and I do. That's why I love college basketball. I love the parity. I love the Big 12 parity. I know we're talking about some teams separating themselves, but literally, unless you're talking about the bottom of the division, a lot of these teams go on the road and anybody can be beat. And I think that makes for really, really good college basketball.
This is from K-Ned over here. Thanks, K-Ned. We appreciate all you put up there. This is interesting. Monday, Iowa State and Houston is still listed as the ESPNU game at 6, and K-State, Texas is 8.
Yeah.
On Big Monday.
I saw that.
What are you doing? I saw they moved some Iowa State games. I guess maybe that's the next week or something. I don't know. I thought they moved Iowa State into a Big Monday, but it's not reflected. And I'm looking at ESPN app, so that you think they'd get it right. But yeah, that's just weird. That's just weird. And plus, it makes me stay up late to work, and I don't like that. Nobody thinks of me, Big B. Nobody.
Well, the thing about it is, it's like, look, I could see if you're having to move like time slots because one might be on the East Coast or West Coast or different time, time zones and things of that nature. Both of these games are in Texas within a couple of hours of each other. You could easily move that around, and there's no harm done. I don't get it. I just don't get it. But ESPN, I don't know. I mean, maybe they got something with Texas going to the SEC, and maybe that's their thing, is that they're going to put them on ESPN no matter what, no matter if they're good or bad or mediocre like they've been playing. They're just going to put them on ESPN, and that's the way it's going to roll. So ridiculous. So, well, I think we'll say this is a good time, Fitz. We'll just take a quick break here. Park one here and have a little word from Synergy Financial Partners. On the other side of this, we'll start taking some questions. So start to send them into the chat. But we will be right back again once we take a word from our partners at Synergy Financial.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right. Welcome everybody back to Big 12 Insiders. We appreciate it. Again, this is Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald. So we were talking about the Big 12 on the first half. This weekend, some of the games. Let's dig into Kansas State for a second here.
Okay.
Look, Kansas State has to win this basketball game, Fitz. If they have any dreams at all of making it to the NCAA tournament, this is a must win. Not, we might be able to play close, and if we make a good showing, we win a couple other games. No. This game has to be won. You're at home. TCU is going to be an NCAA tournament team. You have to win this game if you have any chance whatsoever.
Well, we think they will. I was surprised to find out they're not a quad 1 win. If K-State wins, they're quad 2.
They are quad 2, which is crazy.
Some of these things I don't understand. But if you're Kansas State, you're in this position now of your own doing.
Correct.
You've won one game on the road. You've lost one game at home, being West Virginia on the road, which you get here in a few games here at home. And you lost Oklahoma at home, which was a bad loss because it really puts you behind schedule. Jerome Tang thinks 9-9 is the floor to get in. We spoke to him yesterday, right after your show. I bailed out and went over to the basketball complex and talked to him. He still thinks K-State is in at 9-9. I don't necessarily agree with him based on the metrics that are at work here. But if they do protect their home court, they got 4 home games left. They will have 9 wins, 8 at home and 1 on the road. And can they steal that Monday night game at Texas or an upcoming game at Cincinnati? I don't think they're going to steal one at Allen Fieldhouse, their 3rd home game. So if you don't protect your home court, then you got to win one of those games. And instead of having it as a bonus and maybe getting into 10-8, which I would agree, gets you in. So they've got work to do, but it starts at home.
Yeah.
Defend your fort, man. That's what Big 12 basketball is about this year. Defend your fort to keep your head above water.
Absolutely. They have to be able to do that. If you're not making the tournament. It's just that simple. And again, the turnovers and the things that have cost Kansas State, valuable games. I mean, you go back and you look at it. I mean, look at Tech. K-State had that game won, gave it away. You can talk about some of the calls that went their way or didn't go their way, we should say, but they were firmly in control of that game, should have won the game. Oklahoma State, you have to win that basketball game. Instead, you let that one get away from you. So just like you said, some of these things we've brought on ourselves, and we're in this position because of where we are. However, they do have the ability to fight out of this. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. They got the ability to fight out of this and make this a game. The problem is TCU is not a slouch. It's not a team that we can just say, oh, well, this is a home game. K-State's going to win. No. TCU TCU's got some things to prove themselves. They got a whale of a basketball team too, Fitz. It's going to be a tough game.
They do. They're a good team. They're athletic. They do things. The cash in turnovers. Bad news for K-State. That this is going to be a difficult matchup, and we'll see if the Cats can do it. If they lose this game, it kind of sends a clunker of a tone for the rest of the season. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose, if they turn around and win at Texas somehow. But you're still back in the same spot. You're just they literally seem like a drowning person, barely keeping their head above water, hoping that things will calm down and you'll be able to stay up there for a while. But they just can't afford to sink under the tide again, and we'll see if they can pull that off.
Yeah, well, it's going to be difficult. I do think that Kansas State does go and win this basketball game. I think it's going to be tough, but Fitz, I just think they'll be able to win. I'm taking a look at the standings here, and I look at them, and they're 10th. K-State's 10th, and TCU is 7th. So very, very close as far as all of those metrics are concerned. I'm trying to find a team here. And I'm thinking it might be Texas Tech that maybe Fitz the country isn't talking about, but when it comes to the tournament, they might be a team that ends up in the Sweet 16 that nobody is talking about. I like Texas Tech as being one of those teams.
They're basically what K-State was last year. First-year coach from the Scott Drew tree that comes in, hits the transfer portal, hits some gold, and just starts sneaking up on people and beating some people pretty badly. This is a huge test for them. Iowa State has had almost as big as a home court advantage as anyone in the conference, in Houston and Kansas has huge home court advantages. But Iowa State's been right up there. They're just pounding people. So if Tech can just play with them, it's a good sign. If they win somehow, it's a magical sign that everything is falling into place for Tech. It's going to be a great game. Again, why is this game not on national TV? It just drives me crazy. But this is the self-fulfilling prophecy of ratings. You put this game on TV, you put this game on a platform like ESPN or ESPN2. Savvy basketball fans are going to watch it. Absolutely. They know.
They sure do.
But ESPN treats everyone like monkeys that can't make up, think for themselves. And by not putting this game on a big platform, they don't offer them the opportunity to have big ratings. And then they turn around and say, well, look at your ratings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it frustrates me that, again, Monday night, as Kane had pointed out, Texas gets to be on Big Monday. I know you guys are playing the most important game of the season, maybe in the Big 12, but you're not Texas. And then at the end of the season, they're going to look at Texas's basketball ratings. It's nonsense how they do this. And then, they give someone the advantages and say, what, you're just outstanding. And it's kind of strange. It's just, and it doesn't, this behavior by ESPN is fairly consistent, and it doesn't really add up because you're not hurting Texas if they're not on ESPN on Monday night. But you are Houston and Iowa State, two valuable items, two valuable teams. Why wouldn't you want to build these up? You own their rights too.
Correct.
It's just I haven't been able to figure out ESPN's business model for years.
Well, maybe that's the next thing is, Brett Yormark, maybe he gets that basketball deal done sooner than later, and we don't even have to deal with this anymore, Fitz. I just, because it becomes frustrating. Like I said, everybody wants to see the best basketball games that are on. Everybody wants to see the best football games that are on. Nobody wants to see a game between two last place teams that aren't. The game might be good, but you know what? I'd still want to see the game between the two best teams. Put that game on. I don't care if they're in the middle of Timbuktu. Fine. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to see really good basketball. Make the change, ESPN. It's not that difficult to do, especially on Monday. Come on now. Again, I could see if it was UCF or somebody way out west and you're having to change time slots and all this stuff, and it made that big of a deal. The game is in Austin. The other game is in Houston. I mean, a couple of hours difference, and you can't the ESPN trucks can't make it there or something. What are we doing? It's just.
I wonder what the ACC game is at 6:00, because if that's a clunker, they could swap that out too. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know their contractual obligations. But you bring up a good point with the basketball conference, because I think the Big 12 has great untapped potential in revenue from basketball. They've been playing again. They've been playing the ESPN model, the game they play. Basketball is only 10 to 20%, and yet overall basketball provides them more programming through the year.
Of course.
So if you're only paying, if your contract's $50 million at school and only $5 million of it's for basketball, you're stealing, man.
Yes.
And Brett Yormark recognizes that it's closer to 50% than 5 or 10. But maybe it's in the 30% to 40% range, but you're still underpaying, and particularly for a product that's high quality as a Big 12, because ESPN acts like everything's regional except for some teams are national.
Correct.
That's their entire belief.
Forever. That's right.
Everyone else is a regional interest except for these certain schools, and we're trying to get all the rights to as many as possible. Basketball, football fans know good product.
Yep.
If K-State and Utah are going to play for the Big 12 championship in football next season, the fact that they're not huge fan bases, or however you want to define it, they're not one of your favorite choices, that game's going to get great ratings because people know football and they'll watch it. But that brings us to what's going on over here. Let's get into the ACC thing. How would you feel if your Cardinals ended up in the Big 12?
Wouldn't be. I couldn't be any happier if that were to happen. I was so giddy the last time, Fitz, when I thought it was going to happen, and I don't get disappointed about much. I think I'm too old to be disappointed about all that much anymore. But I was really disappointed because I'm like, well, first off, my thought was, well, why doesn't the Big 12 want Louisville? What's wrong with Louisville? I mean, it's got great athletics. It's in a big city, and the city supports the university. It's not one of those, well, it's in a big city, kind of like a Houston. It is the exact opposite of Houston. The entire city will support Louisville. I mean, they have a gigantic basketball arena. The football stadium is nice. I was like, man, they don't want us. What's wrong with us? But if they were to come into the conference, I would love it. I would absolutely love it. They add a lot. Now, I know we talk about television markets and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how the Louisville metropolitan area, how much that's going to add. But there's 1 million people in the metropolitan area, right. So it can't hurt. I mean, I know it's not that far from Cincinnati, but they're not the same metropolitan areas. So it absolutely can't hurt to bring them in. They would bring quality football. Hopefully they can get basketball back on track. Yeah. And so, but they're definitely going to bring quality football and quality other sports as well. That's the main thing. It's like, it's not just football and basketball. I know those are the money makers, but women's volleyball, Louisville is one of the best in the country, a top 5 program every single year in women's, or I shouldn't say women's volleyball, it's just volleyball. Women's basketball, again, a top 10 program every single year. So other stuff, especially in baseball, they would add a lot to the conference if they came in. So it's more than just selfish reasons for me. They would actually add some good stuff to the conference if they were able to get in.
I would love it. I still sit here and look back at the decision when TCU and West Virginia were brought in of Texas essentially blocking on their own the admittance of Louisville and Cincinnati at the same time, for the simple reason they might lose control of the conference. And right then, that's when the conference died.
Yeah.
It hung on for 10 more years or whatever. But right then, when Texas made it very clear, we really don't give a crap about the future of the conference. We just want to live our best lives, even if it's not your best life.
Correct.
That's when the conference was doomed. There was nothing to do about it, because I almost feel like Texas did it intentionally, believing that if they and Oklahoma left, the other 8 could not survive without them. Another miscalculation on the part of Texas athletics, a miscalculation that will soon be that the SEC gives a crap about their feelings in Orange Town. I cannot wait to see that. But if they go into the AC, if the ACC splinters apart, the question doesn't become, will they add? They're going to add. Who's available? And then what are you adding for? I mean, are you recognizing that basketball is part of the equation, but not, 50%? That football still is a majority, even if it isn't as big a majority as you'd think. I mean, certainly, I think if football brands are available, like a Virginia Tech or Clemson, you got to take them. But if you're also yearning to be a basketball conference, do you stare at Louisville and Duke and whomever else,
right,
and say, we're not doing it? No, I think Brett Yormark says, yeah, we're going to do it. Now, I don't think Duke academically would want to come into the Big 12 because of that nonsense, but we'll see how this plays out. The money, though, will start to even out if they load up on basketball. I don't see anything, even if they got Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and Virginia Tech, the dream scenario for the Big 12, that'll never happen. They still don't close the gap on the other conferences in football.
No,
they let me take it back. They close it, but they don't completely close it. They get a little bit closer, but how substantial is that in money? But if you add the Dukes and the NC State and North Carolina and Louisville, holy crap.
Yeah.
Your basketball product just went through the roof. Now, North Carolina has basically said we're never going to the Big 12. That's fine. We already had a Texas. We don't need, baby blue Texas. But there, as was pointed out by Mike on this podcast yesterday, North Carolina does have the biggest site on our network, which is just amazing. But that just shows that they are a national brand that maybe people sleep on a little bit because of the football not being so good.
Well, here's what my thoughts on with the football. I mean, football obviously is king, and it drives, the ship, the car, whatever analogy you want to use. It is the driver. But it seemed like when they started adding and all of this stuff started going down, Fitz, it's like they started adding these teams, but it was after, okay, they had a good year in football. We need them. It wasn't, they have all of this success or a 5 or 10 years of success. It was, they were good last year. Yep, we got to have them. Oh, no, that school was good last year. They were good 2 years ago. We got to have them. And then it started to fall apart. West Virginia was a perfect example of that. And look, I love West Virginia is fine, but they have a little bit of a history, but they went to an Orange Bowl, and then all of a sudden the Big 12 was like, we got to have them. And then as soon as they got in, what happened? I mean, they haven't done much. I mean, they've won a few games here or there, but they haven't done much. It's like, open your eyes a little bit. But I think that was just poor leadership at the time, though. I'll leave it at, the leadership wasn't very good at the time because, again, I understand going after football money, but if it's, hey, they've had a good season, and then all of a sudden, yep, we got to have that team without doing just a little bit of research, it comes back to bite you. And look, I'm glad West Virginia's in the conference, and they deserve to be in the conference. At the same time, there's some other schools that probably should have been looked at. Hopefully the Big 12 doesn't do that again, because I know we've mentioned it a million times, but we can mention it a million more. ACC is on life support. It's literally on life support. And somebody, I believe, probably around June or July is going to end up pulling that plug.
Yeah. And again, I said this about the Pac-12, and in some ways I was wrong because it wasn't as immediate as I thought. But I thought once a school like Colorado made the jump, it would be like a landslide. It would just be a destabilization they couldn't recover from. Now, they tried to hang on for a while, but I think it was written in stone it was going to happen at that point. And the same will be with the ACC. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And once it happens and one school gets into a major conference, one of the big two that offers more money, everyone's going to have their hands out asking for more soup. They're just going to be begging with those baby eyes. Can we come in? And the sad truth for the ACC, which they don't want to recognize, and neither does the national media, you're financially off better in the Big 12 than the current ACC. And it will only get better with this next contract coming up. And if Brett Yormark pulls off the basketball coup and separates the contracts, it's going to be extremely good. And it might be pretty close to the other two conferences. while leaving some emphasis on basketball.
Yes. Here's a good question here from KNet. Does the Big 12 need to schedule better the basketball non-con? That's a two-way street, I think. They can't force people.
First of all, I believe they're going to go to 20 conference games with the next round of expansion. I think, or maybe that's going to happen in the future with next year. I think it does. Next year they go to 20. If you go to another round of expansion, do you add more conference games? After all, put it this way, if you go to 20 schools and you've got a 20 game conference schedule, you have maybe K-State, KU play home and home, and you play the other 19 schools or 18 schools once. I mean, that there's no, what am I trying to say? There's no staleness to that schedule. You're going, Kansas goes from playing Houston to go to Duke, to go to, Arizona, and the fact you don't have return games is kind of unfortunate, but also what freshness to the schedule. There's no, this game was just on 2 weeks ago. Now they're playing like BYU K-State. There's like 2 weeks separating these games. No, I'm interested to see how the conference handles that. Jerome Tang came out really against this Big East challenge. He said, I want to pick my games. I want to pick my games and pick when I want to play them, which I thought was interesting because he's a guy that wants to schedule aggressively. He wants to challenge his team. Didn't necessarily accomplish it, but that was just because of how the other teams have ended up playing. We all thought Miami would be better and USC too, and they certainly looked better. But you're going to have to be real careful with that. But as Kate also pointed out, you don't want a trash non-conference schedule. The networks won't appreciate that if you do that while they're paying you big money. So
exactly. Well, and not only that, the selection committee will look at your non-conference schedule and they'll kill you when it comes time, to pick teams to put in the tournament. They will absolutely hold it against you. And the inconsistency, number one, that they have, but what they usually always say, it's who do you play and who do you beat? And they're not really talking about conference games when they say that, because your conference is your conference. They're usually talking about who did you play in the non-conference and who did you beat in the non-conference. And if you don't play anybody in the non-conference, well, you better beat a whole lot of people in conference, because we are absolutely going to hold that against you when it comes time for you to place you against somebody else. When they're comparing the resumes, your resume got to look better. And when you don't play anybody and you don't beat anybody, that's kind of what BYU kind of got into. They didn't play a whole lot of people in the non-con, didn't beat a whole lot of people. Well, now all of a sudden they did in the conferences, so they look a lot better. It can become dicey, Fitz. It just can become dicey.
Yep. A couple more comments over here in the chat. This one, this is my favorite viewer we've ever had. I haven't had anyone tell me it's good to see you. I mean, it's usually not something you want to see. And my buddy, Mr. Durham over here, this is solid basketball sports analysis. If you're going to add a team from the state that makes bourbon.
Whew. I've been on a bourbon tour a time or two in Louisville, Kentucky. Man, I tell you what, I made the mistake, Fitz, of going at 11 o'clock in the morning. By 2 o'clock, I couldn't see anything. Absolutely wild. But it was fun. Don't get me wrong. It was fun. But that's another thing. I mean, it's just, to be able to go to different cities, I think is important too, for fans to be able to travel to different places. Maybe they haven't been. I know there was an away football game for K-State anyway to play Louisville, but I just think having these other places to go, I think is going to be big for the conference coming up, adding all these schools. And not that Louisville's getting added or anything. I know it's a possibility. I just think in general, when you talk about it, look, it's going to be what it is. There's going to be 3 conferences. It just is. That's going to happen. We just got to get used to that. Whether we like it, we don't like it, we're going to have to learn to live with it. So I don't know. I get tired of the constant just back and forth and the ever moving parts everywhere. And for fans like us, it becomes a hassle, because you're like, man, when can we just get some stability? Humans like stability. And especially when you're talking about fans of athletic teams, you just want some stability, because the season is already going to be hectic enough. It's like, okay, well, who are we playing? What's going there? Where am I going to root? What's going on? And if we don't know, it just causes problems, not only for us. I'm sure it causes problems for players. Players get worried about it with everything else they got going on. Coaches, look, nobody ever feels sorry for coaches, but coaches have a tough job trying to deal and shuffle with all of this, especially a basketball coach. Because as a basketball coach, you 100% know you have no say in what is going on. You have absolutely no say. So as a basketball coach, that's got to be frustrating, Fitz.
I know. It does. It's crazy.
Man, oh, man. So well, we're going to take our last break here.
Hold on 1 second real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
See, this is what I thought. I thought Iowa State and Houston had been moved to the 8 p.m. slot on ESPN, but the ESPN app still doesn't reflect that.
It does not. It does not. I'm looking at it literally right this very second, and it does not. It has not been moved.
Bram, thanks for pointing that out. I thought that was the case, but if anyone should know, it's ESPN. And apparently the poor guy that's running the app, it didn't get the notice. They forgot to send him the press release. Yeah. Thanks for dropping that in.
Yeah, it has not been moved on the app as of yet. So we'll come back with our final thoughts here after we take another quick break from our partner and sponsor, Synergy Financial Partners.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Well, Fitz, again, a little final thoughts here on Big 12 Insiders. I'm looking forward to this weekend. It's not necessarily the biggest weekend, but I'm looking forward to basketball. I'm looking forward to the conference kind of solidifying the powers that be. Monday will be a big day. Again, the Insiders comes on Monday at 1 p.m. Central Time, so please come and check us out. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to the end of this season. A lot's going to get solidified. We'll learn a lot about some of these teams, the middle of the road teams. I think we're still going to get some of obviously the cream of the crop is at the top, but we're still going to get some of these teams in the middle. I think they're going to work their way up. I think a Texas Tech, who's already up there. I think a Baylor is going to start to solidify themselves as being somebody that has to be dealt with, not only in the conference, but also in the NCAA tournament. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and seeing what happens and what this conference actually looks like coming down the stretch here.
You've got at least 6 games. Most schools have 7 games left in conference play. That's a lot of time to go bad or get better.
Yes.
And we've seen it happen to teams a couple times, like, oh, we're bad. Oh, we're good again. Oh, we're bad again. And so a lot could be reinvented. Someone could go on a tear. K-State wins out. They're not going to win out. I'm just using that as an example. All of a sudden that miserable, 5-6 becomes 12-6. Even if even if they end up with 10 wins, that's going to be a heck of a finish because that's 5-2 down the stretch.
Yeah.
We'll see. A lot of basketball to go in the best basketball conference in the country. They're just beating the snot out of each other. Will it have an impact, positive or negative, on them in the postseason? That's the big question. We need to find out.
Yeah, tough, especially that Big 12 tournament. That is going to be a grinder. So appreciate everybody joining us. Again, Monday is the Insider, so appreciate everybody taking the time there and coming to see us 1 p.m. Central Time. Otherwise, check us out again. We are Tuesday through Friday, 1 p.m. Central Time, the Big 12 Insiders. Thank you guys for joining. We will see you next week.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.